Hi, this is Pastor Rick, and this is Good Friday of Passion Week. When I was young, I never considered why the Friday before Resurrection Sunday was called Good Friday. As I grew older, the awfulness of what Jesus went through was overwhelming. Now my thoughts turn to a question of how could we call this Friday good? Jesus was arrested during the early morning hours of Friday and taken before the high priest. He stood before the Sanhedrin, which was the high court of the Jews. The high priest questioned him. Mark writes in chapter 14, verses 61 to 65, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am," said Jesus. "And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." The high priest tore his clothes. "Why do we need any more witnesses?" he asked. "You've heard this blasphemy. What do you think?" They all condemned him as worthy of death. Then some began to spit at him. They blindfolded him and struck him with their fist. They said, "Prophesy." And the guards took him and beat him. Jesus was mocked and beaten by the guards. He's disowned by Peter, his most outgoing disciple, 3 times before the rooster crows. He's then taken before Pilate and then to King Herod, the regional puppet king of the Romans, where he is questioned. The book of John in the New Testament records a conversation between Pilate and Jesus. It is one that is often overlooked and yet possesses a question that many have. The Jewish leaders were insistent in finding Jesus worthy of death. They pressured Pilate because they didn't have the right to sentence Jesus to death. John records in chapter 18, verses 33 to 38, Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people, the chief priests, handed you over to me. What is it that you've done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason that I was born and came into this world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." What is truth? Pilate seems to say this in a sarcastic or maybe a disgusted tone. I wonder if there was a time in Pilate's life or career where truth mattered. Had he seen so much corruption that he learned to ignore truth when it was convenient? Here he's afraid of not pleasing the Jews. In the New Testament book of John, chapter 19, Pilate finds no basis for the charges that the Jews had claimed. Pilate saw that the Jews were on the verge of a riot, and he chose to let them have Jesus to be crucified rather than to stand on the side of truth. Jesus was put to death upon the decision of Pilate, who chose to ignore truth. All along, though, this was the plan of God, so that one man would die for the sins of all. Too often, truth is pushed to the wayside because it isn't convenient or popular. Jesus had just been encouraging his followers the night before when they became confused about where he was going. He tells them they know the way, but they still were confused. In John chapter 14:6, Jesus answers, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Sometimes we can be like the disciples, not understanding which way we need to go. And sometimes we can be like Pilate, questioning truth. It's Passion Week, and this is the darkest day for the followers of Jesus. Many had placed their confidence in Jesus as being the way, the truth, and the life. But they didn't understand how this was going to work. Their whole future was rocked by the events of Friday. We find ourselves in similar situations when our world falls apart. A call from a doctor with a devastating diagnosis, an unforeseen accident, or a life tragically cut short can leave us wondering, what is truth? Where is God? How could he let this happen? God hasn't been caught off guard. We've had no promises about this life being free of heartache and disappointment. That is the whole point of the Lord making a way for us to be with him eternally, where there will be no more sin and heartache and brokenness. The world is broken and racked with sin. The bad things that we experience here are a direct result of sin's effect on all of creation. Think about the things that break your heart and disappoint you. It is on this Friday that the weight of the world's sin is placed on the back of Jesus. Jesus, the one who was sinless, who bore the weight of all of our sin. His obedience in dying for us hurt the worst around 3 p.m. that Friday as he cried out in Matthew 27:30, my God, why have you forsaken me?" For the first time ever, Jesus had been forsaken and separated from the Father because of sin. Our sin. It wasn't much longer when he cried out again in a loud voice, "It is finished." And he died. It is finished. He had accomplished his purpose. In a few days, the disciples would begin to remember the things that Jesus had said. I'm inviting you to remember them too. He's the way, the truth, and the life. It's Friday, and our hearts are heavy to know what Jesus went through. It's Friday, but Sunday is coming.